Hello, today I want to share with you a story of a 10-year-old and Melba toast and bouillon. And you might think, well, wow, why are we talking about that? So often I'm asked about what, inspires my work. Why do I work as a nutritionist? Why do I have a passion to work with clients and help them navigate through health challenges? And really, the genesis is my own story. So when I was very young in grade school, let's say around 10 years old, um, I was put on a diet, and I was a kid in modern 2026 era. I would have been seen as a normal kid, but somehow we had a pediatrician who labeled me as a chubby kid and decided I needed to go on a diet. And so it's a very vivid memory for me. I remember sitting in the doctor's office, all the details, where he was sitting, had a very big desk. He opened the bottom drawer of that desk on the right side, and he had this huge pad that was at least legal size. He ripped off this paper that listed a diet, eating, certain foods from certain groups. And that was the moment, really, I got disconnected from my own body in many ways. I remember feeling like, uh-oh, I've done something wrong. And I say this with all love and appreciation for my parents. I know they thought that they were doing the best for me. He was a very beloved pediatrician. He treated my siblings. He also treated my cousins. So this was a man who was very in our family circle. He made house calls, like he was the real deal. So I'm sure they felt if he had the suggestion, this was the way to go. Um, but it put me in diet thinking. And I have memories of being a little kid going to my cousin's house. I had a very skinny cousin, really, really skinny. And I remember us having snacks, and she would have chocolate chip cookies and milk with Nestle's Quick. Now, some of you may remember Nestle's Quick. It was a powder, chocolate powder you put in milk. And my diet included chicken bouillon and Melba toast. Some of you might not even know what Melba toast is, but it was sort of like this very dry, crisp cracker, very thin. And who knew at that point in my life how much that was going to inform everything that followed? And of course, I became the dieting girl, right? My whole adolescence, I've been on every diet, you name it, I've been on it. I remember being in that battle always with I have a bad body. Why is it doing this? So all of this is to say, I think this is relatable. I think some of you may hear yourself in this story. So that put me on this path of feeling disconnected, feeling like my body was doing something that I was not in charge of and clearly was wrong or bad because it needed this intervention. And as I moved through, my 20s, etc., there was a point where I gave it all up and I was like, no diets, forget it. I'm just going to get off the subject. But of course, it stuck with me. So as we fast forward in my working career, as I started to connect, I became connected to more holistic medicine, working with a chiropractor, and then, of course, going on to become a licensed clinical nutritionist, really getting immersed in functional medicine, looking at root causes. And so when I look back to my small self now, I see some of what was happening for me. I think I was a little inflamed. Was a kid with lots of allergies. I was given whole milk. There are lots of threads. I could give you every detail that I look back and go, okay, now I see why that young body was a little out of balance. And now it makes more sense to me. Why am I telling you this story? Because that embodiment of that disconnection is what has given me really the passion for the work I do, and ultimately to create The Body Was in Blueprint. Because when I became a clinician and started working with thousands of clients, I would see myself, right? I would hear people say, oh, well, my body does this thing over here. I really don't agree with it. I don't know why it's doing that. I'm over here and I have an idea, I have an agenda. Here's what I think my body should be doing, but it's not. And that, of course, with my clinical knowledge and all the expertise that I have in body mind medicine, yoga, heart math, I began to really to see, okay, we've just sort of lost connection and we're seeing the body as an enemy. We're rejecting the messages it's giving, thinking it's bad or wrong. And instead, there's wisdom there. The body is trying to get our attention. Now, certainly in functional medicine, we're looking at a timeline, we're going for root causes. So we're looking back, right, to everything, including how were you born? What was your early childlike life like? What has been your path? What have been the emotional events? What was the health events? What is your family's health events? What is your mood, your history? We know that informs our health or lack of health. So I developed the Body Wisdom Blueprint to give a framework to go back and say, well, wait a minute, let me make friends with myself again. Let me reconnect. Let me recreate a communication line that now I can actually trust my body. It's wise. It gives me supportive information. And that's really the heart of the Body Wisdom Blueprint. So in the blueprint, we go through 3 key phases. The first is investigate, then activate, then elevate. And I'll be doing more videos talking about those, but the idea is that we have to tune in, we have to notice, we have to get our data, like we're at a crime scene. What are all the events that have happened to the body that get you to this place? And then in activate, what do we need to change? It's pretty simple, not easy, but simple. We probably need more of some things and less of others. Maybe we need more nutrients, more of specific foods, less stress, less screen time, less processed foods, right? Let's move the needle in both ways. And then, of course, our last phase is activate. After activate is elevate. So we've activated. That's a big phase, right? We're working with that. We kind of always are working on activate. And when we have new events, we're coming back to investigate. But our elevate piece is how do we gather what we've learned from our investigation and our activation, what the body has responded to sustain good habits, to sustain supportive choices for the body versus, oh, I stayed on that diet for a few weeks and then I got a little bored and I just went back to what I used to do. And then generally the body will then feel poorly, right, at that point to say, oh, great, I'm getting the same data again, so I'm going to hand it back to you to say, this isn't great for me. And so I'm unhappy again, and we're back to that same situation. So the whole idea of moving through these phases is it's a viable working system that you can continue to play with and explore, all the while creating more sustainable supportive practices so that you can be well. So that's the why. That's how I really started the work I do. I would love to hear your comments. Certainly the best way to support this channel is to subscribe. If you have any stories or any resonance with what I said, like you recognize, I'd love to hear that in the comments. And we'll talk again soon.